Sometimes in life, the things you pray for become the things that you complain about.
Welcome to the Council of Dudes podcast. I'm your host, Vinny Brusco. I am a father, a husband, the founder of Agora Social Club, a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a certified life coach, and a facilitator of the Council of Dudes men's group. This podcast is here to help you tap into and follow your golden thread, that feeling that pulls you forward to become the best version of yourself. If you're someone who's into personal development and self-help and is looking to live a life of more alignment, then this is the podcast for you. Subscribe to the channel, click the notification button, and follow along on the journey of the show.
And here we go.
Well, as I was saying the first time around, the thing about this book, to me, it stands out in a multitude of different ways. One is there's a personal element to it, which I think everyone in the room can relate to that. You've personalized it with your own experiences that brings the reader in, and it's super relatable in that regard. Secondly, you pull in these historical moments and these different parts of time, where you realize that these experiences, this internal dialogue, these different types of wealth have been a part of our culture and our human history forever, right? It dates all the way back to, Greek mythology and all those types of things. And thirdly, as we're repeating this, the idea that right now the culture seems to be shifting, right? We had the Great Resignation a few years ago where everyone kind of steps outside of their traditional job roles and starts seeking higher levels of what value is, what they want their lives to look like. And more importantly, what is actual true wealth, right? There's the corporate structure, and as a culture, that's still kind of intact. But I think on the individual scale, people are now realizing, I don't want to spend my time doing these things. So how did you personally kind of come into these different 5 types of wealth?
I think that the Peter Drucker quote in the book that I reference is, I would say, probably the most underrated and essential quote that I talk about, which is what gets measured gets managed. That's the idea that the things that you measure in life are the things that you narrowly hone in on and optimize around. They're the things that you focus on, and that you sort of blind yourself to everything else while you hone in on these few things that you're able to measure. And historically, throughout history, money has been the measurable thing. That's actually a feature. It has allowed us to build society around capitalism, its free markets, it's all of these good things that have come from measuring money, and money's measurability has been a feature. But unfortunately, when it comes to our lives, money is sort of an imperfect or at least incomplete measure, meaning it is effective in some ways in accumulating and building good things early in your life, happiness as a main thing. Money does buy happiness in those early days. But after a certain point, it becomes very incomplete because there are these other areas of life that we really need to measure and focus on if we want to build towards a good life, which is what we're fundamentally all after. That is the much bigger picture war, if you will, that we're all waging. And so what I came to understand in my own life by around age 30 with this, sort of crisis of sorts that I talk about in the book is that we are all marching towards a Pyrrhic victory. Pyrrhic victory is the idea of the victory that comes at such a steep cost to the victor that it might as well have been a defeat. And you don't need to look far in your own life to find examples of people who have done that. We all know people who have made hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, maybe even $1 billion, who we celebrate and admire. We pat them on the back and we write books about those people and we tell them that they won the game. And we ignore the fact that they have 3 ex-wives and 4 kids that don't talk to them. And we all have to ask ourselves in our own life, the way that I did, is that actually a game that I care to win? Because the reality is, it's not for most people. And so if we are going to, as a society, celebrate those people, my call to action is that maybe we should be celebrating different types of people. Maybe we should all be defining success, defining what a wealthy life means in our own ways, rather than just accepting by default the ways that we've been handed by the cultural defaults.
Was that something that was pressed upon you at a young age? Because I know your father's in academia. Your mother is a small business owner, and they both came from very different cultures and kind of broke the norm and expectation of what their families wanted. So was that something that was kind of that drum beat in your household, where it's like you kind of have to go out on your own and discover these things, or was it kind of something you just kind of discovered at that age of 30?
I don't think it was something that I really don't think it's something that your parents can necessarily teach you either. My parents definitely in their own way had questioned the defaults that they were handed by the world. I mean, I write about this in the book. Like, their relationship in the first place is them rejecting common convention, rejecting the path that they were handed to carve their own and choose their own. But in another way, my parents have very, I don't know, like safe, stable views on what it means to build a good life. I mean, my dad's a professor. He's a tenured professor. That's like about the most risk-averse, safe path that you can follow as a human. Yeah. It's also very low leverage. Like, you know, we all talk about leverage now. We talk about finding asymmetries. There is nothing more symmetric than being a tenured professor. He worked extremely hard, and you get paid well, but not ever like in an asymmetric, you know, life-changing way well. My mom is Indian, so like very culturally focused on academic performance and on sort of like status creating jobs. So taking a job at McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or becoming a doctor or a lawyer, like that was the path that I feel like would have made the most sense to my parents. And frankly, I was doing that. Like I was actually, and I think in a lot of ways, the path that I chose of taking the job in finance was under the surface trying to get the pats on the back from family, from my parents, from more society at large. Like, take the thing that is going to make me sound impressive. I actually think that the best career advice I've ever heard, which is more recent, I wish I had heard it at a younger age, is to ask yourself before you take a job, do I actually want this job, or do I want other people to see me having this job? There's a big difference between the two. There are jobs that you actually want to go and do, and then there are jobs that you want the LinkedIn post. You want to be able to post it and have people be like, yo, that's awesome that you got this job at whatever private equity fund. Great, that's very cool. That's what I was chasing. I was chasing the LinkedIn post life, not the life that I actually wanted to build. When I stepped off that track, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to my parents. I mean, my parents believe in me very much, but like for my mom, for me to leave, you know, a well-paying, like high-status, prestige job in finance to go write threads on Twitter, like I think my mom just thought I burned out. She was like, oh, you go do this for a couple of years and then go back and take another job working in finance. She really didn't understand it because our parents don't have patterns for like the way the world works today, that you can just go do things like this and use it and carve your own path. And so, no, I mean, the answer to your question in a long, winding way is no. I don't think that it was, learned through my parents. I do think there's a lineage that I can trace to questioning some of these defaults, asking these questions. My parents always encouraged my sister and I to think independently. It's definitely something that I want to teach my son and pass down to him. But it definitely didn't make sense to my parents when I walked down this path.
Welcome to Agora Social Club, the Westchester's hub for guys to gather, connect, and unwind. In the last 6 years, I've been facilitating a men's group called the Council of Dudes. And within that 6 years, I realized that guys need a place where they can get together, connect, and build community. A place that's not the gym, that's not jiu-jitsu, that's not the bar, but a place where guys can come with no ego and grow and develop together. So here we have our chess table. We're gonna be having monthly chess lessons and our Take a Book, Leave a Book library. Some of these I've read, some of these I haven't. Quantum physics to personal development to fiction. We also have our record player area. In the last few years, I've become very obsessed with jazz music. And if you don't know how to play vinyl, no big deal. It hooks up to your phone via Bluetooth. We have artwork from California to local artists. We have these small little work tables, so if you want to hang on the couch and get some work done, you can just come pop them open. And we also have our little workspace here with quotes from Muhammad Ali, Albert Einstein, Theodore Roosevelt. We also have our coffee bar, small fridge, and more quotes and artwork over the wall. Head on over to agorasocialclub.com, sign up for our free 7-day trial, and with that, you will get a key fob. Scan your key fob, and you have access to this space from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. So if you're a guy in the Westchester area and you're looking to gather, connect, and unwind with like-minded men, head on over to agorasocialclub.com.
So you're at the age of 30, which kind of seems like for a lot of people is that line of demarcation where life seems to go in a different direction. You know, you check all the boxes, you look out the window, you say, all right, I got the money, I got the job, you know, I have the cars, and I have all the proverbial status symbols that recognize that I've arrived, right? And you talk about it in the book, this idea that you get to a point where like, I've arrived, and you almost expect something else to happen afterwards, but it just continues. And then that bar keeps on moving and moving and moving.
Yeah, that idea, the arrival fallacy, is really central to this whole thing. And by the way, it never ends. And as much as I write about it, I need to read my own book because it happens to me still constantly. I built up hitting the New York Times bestseller list as the arrival. Like, oh, I'm going to feel totally different. I'm not going to be stressed about anything that I'm doing. You see me, I walk in here, I'm like, oh man, I like have a crazy week. I should just be able to, I thought I was going to have arrived. Everything's going to be great. I'm not going to have stresses. There's not going to be that. And the reality is, again and again, you find it. You have to relearn and re-pull yourself into that awareness that we can't attach our own happiness, our own fulfillment, our own contentment to these destinations. It has to be built into how you are living your life. You have to design into your life that feeling of thriving along that journey, because you're not going to find it if you make it conditional on achieving something, whatever that thing is. We have enough science to support that idea now too. Michael Norton is this Harvard Business School professor. He did this really interesting study, asked a bunch of high net worth people worth anywhere from $1 million through $100 million plus how happy they were on a scale of 1 to 10. Then he asked them how much more money they would need to be at a 10. And across the board, whether they were worth $1 million or $100 million plus, they all said they needed 2 to 3 times as much money. It makes no sense,
right?
But that's what we do. We have a powerful tendency to reset whatever the goalpost is and have it disappear and reappear on the horizon. It becomes this mirage. You're making your happiness conditional on whatever it is that you've propped up as the destination.
So how do you ground yourself back into seemingly reality and be grateful and be appreciative, but still be aspirational?
It's a constant awareness and action battle. So I say, like, this still happens to me. Right? I mean, just a few weeks ago, I had this moment with my son. He's 2.5 years old. I'm sitting in my office focusing on something for the book launch and really focused. And he barges into my office. He's throwing things around. He's like doing 2.5-year-old stuff, just tossing things around.
How quickly
we all know that feeling.
Upset by that, yeah.
And I immediately started having this very negative train of thought of like, why is he doing this? This is so annoying. Doesn't he know that I'm trying to focus? All of these things. And I looked, and I had this little picture of the two of us from when he was born on my desk. And I had this moment, it snapped me back into it, zooming back to 4 years ago, when my wife and I were, candidly, struggling in this 2-year journey of infertility. And I had prayed every single night for 2 years without fail that we would one day have a healthy child. And here I was in this moment complaining about the exact thing that I had prayed for. And it was a reminder to me of a very important fact, which is that sometimes in life, the things you pray for become the things that you complain about, if you let them. If you don't have that awareness to catch yourself in that moment, pull yourself back into the present and recognize that sometimes you are quite literally living out the prayers of your younger self. You are already living that thing. And so to appreciate it, to be able to pull yourself back in those moments when you lose sight of it, and to recognize that you can pursue growth, you can chase things, you can push yourself, but to also appreciate that with balance for gratitude in the present. That is where your best life ends up being found.
Yeah. What do you do when God gives you everything you asked for, right? Like, how do you live in that gratitude and then still have those aspirations? Out of the 5 types of wealth, right? If someone's just entering their journey, maybe they're coming into that age where they're having that self-actualization. They're going through those hierarchy of needs, right? And they're realizing, okay, check. What would you say is a great or the first one to focus on?
I really think it's hard to appreciate or enjoy any of the types of wealth without social wealth. I think if you don't have relationships and people in your life that you can turn to and love, it's very hard to enjoy any of them. No one dreams about being on a yacht by themselves. No one wants to be on a private jet by themselves. Like, I don't know. I don't really dream of going on long hikes by myself. Like, I would love to be able to do these things with people that I really love and care about. And again, scientifically, relationships are the single greatest predictor of building a healthy, happy life. A Harvard study of adult development, amazing study over the course of 85 years, followed 2,000 people. They found that the single greatest predictor of physical health at age 80 was relationship satisfaction at age 50. It wasn't your blood pressure, it wasn't your smoking or drinking habits, your cholesterol. It was how you felt about your relationships that impacted how well you aged. And yet, relationships tend to be the first thing that falls by the wayside when we get busy. It's the first thing that we forget to do, or we say we're too busy. We don't text a friend. We don't get the group together for the annual trip. We don't call our mom. Like, those are the first things that fall, when in fact, that's the first thing we should be investing in when we think about building the good life that we're marching towards. And so, to answer your question directly, like, once you have gotten through those basic human needs, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have to, earn enough money to create the stability to take care of your basic needs: food, shelter, taking care of people around you, basic levels of pleasures, being able to take a vacation. Once you get beyond that, money needs to be a tool for building these other things, not the goal in and of itself. And using it as a tool to create experiences with people you love, generally speaking, not something that anyone ever regrets doing. And so
Yeah, I mean, there is the false idea that money equals happiness, but it is probably the most important tool besides time, right? Money being obviously an energetic frequency that you could utilize and use as a tool. And I went through my stage where I was like, money's just a man-made concept. I mean, it's not even real. But the reality is, it is. But it allocates time, which is the most important tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, money directly buys happiness up to a point. And the science on this is pretty clear. In the early days of your life, money directly buys happiness. It can actually map it. Incremental unit of money equals incremental unit of happiness. And we've probably all felt that at some point in our life, or we're feeling it now, that yes, I have more happiness because I can take care of my family. I can pay for that first vacation or second vacation. I can, not stress about the basic stresses that were stressing me before because I have a little bit more money. That is very real. Beyond a certain point, and it changes depending on where you live and what your situations are. New York versus living in the middle of Nebraska, the number is going to be different, but there is a point at which other things are going to be what drive the incremental happiness in your life. The issue that people run into is that you create a pattern in your mind in those early years that when the money bell rings, you get the happiness cheese. It's like a mouse. And that pattern is very hard to break. So you continue chasing incremental money, thinking that the same linear equation is going to apply from the early days. And it no longer does. And it has changed. The equation has fundamentally shifted, but you keep thinking that it's the same. So you keep chasing it until you run off the cliff. And so what we need to recognize is when that has started to change, start to use money as a tool to invest in these other areas. The other fundamental sort of misunderstanding when it comes to money that I see in people is people think money equals freedom. And that is not true. Money does not equal freedom. Well-used money can help you build a free life. But I know a lot of people who make a whole ton of money and they are anti-free. They are stuck on an unbelievable treadmill. I have a friend who's a senior executive, C-suite executive at a huge public company. $10 million plus a year of cash compensation, like astronomical amount of money. He's worth probably $200 million plus dollars. Afraid to leave a job that he hates because he does not know where he would be able to make the money to fund the lifestyle because they spend $10 million a year. Literally stuck in a job that he's late 30s, working in perpetuity in a job that he absolutely hates when he's worth $200 million. Like, when he tells me this, I was incredulous. I was like, this is the most absurd problem I've ever heard in my life. This is the entire point of having money, is that you could do whatever you want. But money does not equal freedom. He has not designed a life that is free. He is stuck on a treadmill that has been created actually by the money itself. And so recognizing that means that you have to operate differently. If you want to build a free life, then you need to have freedom as the key thing that you are actually trying to use the money for along the journey. Otherwise, you'll just be chasing and playing the game on that money treadmill.
So freedom obviously segues pretty nicely into time, right? And obviously, with Stoic philosophy making its resurgence kind of more commonly now, it's on the wall back here, memento mori, right? Which is a theme of meditate on your death, right? How is that something that people could utilize to recognize time and the importance of time, but also stay present and maneuver accordingly?
Yeah, everything in life is made more beautiful because of its impermanence. There are several great quotes related to that within the book that I find very powerful and centering, that the most beautiful things in life, if you were just to reflect on it, are beautiful because they are impermanent. Sunsets. Why do we appreciate sunsets? Because they go away very quickly. You wouldn't appreciate a sunset if it was there every time. I lived in California for 12 years. I did not appreciate a 70-degree sunny day. I'm being very serious. Here, if it was 70 and sunny tomorrow, I would be like the happiest person alive because it feels impermanent, because it feels different, it stands out. That is what makes these things beautiful. And so in our own life, we have to recognize more often some of these things that are impermanent that we have taken for granted. Our life, our time with the people that we care about most is impermanent, but we don't think about that until it's too late. Time is one of those things that we think about none until the very end when it's the only thing we think about, and then it's too late. Then you're gone. Then these moments have passed. Time with your children is the one that I am thinking about constantly right now. 95% of the time you have with your kids is gone by the time they turn 18. 75% is gone by the time they turn 12. I mean, terrifying statistics to think about. But you can bend those curves. You can take action to create time for these things. These are averages. The entire impetus for me moving back to the East Coast was this recognition that I had 15 more times to see my parents before they were gone. We took an action. I left my job. We sold our house. We moved across the country to live closer to both of our sets of parents, my wife and I. And that number, 15, is now in the hundreds. I see my parents multiple times a month. They're a huge part of my son, their grandson's life. We took an action and actually created time for the things that we care about. We all have that power within us to do that. We can lean into the things that we actually want to create time for.
Yeah, I mean, but it does take the recognition and then obviously the awareness and then the action, right? And that's where people get kind of caught up because you kind of have this self-fulfilling prophecy of like, well, that's just the way it is, instead of thinking like in a chess move and thinking 5, 10, 15 steps ahead and realizing you could actually do something about this and take action on it.
Yeah, I think that mindset shift that I would encourage people to have is anytime you catch yourself in your like mental train of thought saying that's just the way it is, or that's just the way I have to do this, or I just have to do this, you can just take a second and ask yourself if that's really true. Sometimes it is true. Sometimes these things that we've been told over and over again are actually true, actually real. Sometimes they're not. There's this parable of 3 men make a tiger. This minister goes into the king and he says to the king, if I were to tell you there was a tiger in the market, what would you say? The king says, I would say that's ridiculous. Then he says, what if I were to tell you 2 people are saying there's a tiger in the market? King says, well, then I would question it. Then he says, what if there were 3 people saying it? He's like, well, then I'd believe there's a tiger in the market. And the minister says, there's no tiger in the market, but if I tell you enough people said it, you're going to believe that to be the truth. And the point of that story is to recognize that there are a lot of things that we believe to be true simply because they have been repeated to us enough times. And that applies to your work, it applies to your life, it applies to all of these different things. That is not to say that we just blanket reject all of those things as false, because sometimes when 3 people tell you there's a tiger in the market, there is actually a tiger in the market. Sometimes there's not. And so you need to pause and ask the question, because otherwise you're never going to know the difference. You're just going to blindly accept these things as fact. I found that a lot, by the way, with work. Like I have this exercise in the book of this energy calendar, like identifying the things that are energy creating versus energy draining. And one of the big energy drainers for me in my old job when I did this was phone calls and Zoom meetings. And my initial reaction was, well, I can't do anything about that. I'm an associate at a private equity fund. I have to be on a lot of phone calls and a lot of Zoom meetings. That's my job. And I paused and I asked myself, was that really true? Could I adjust these things in some way to make them less draining? And the reality was half the phone calls I could do as walk-in calls. And so I did that. And it turns out that doing a walking phone call versus sitting at your desk and doing a call is a dramatically different experience. You're outside, you get like nature, you're open, you're not trying to multitask, so you're more focused, the outcomes are better. And so I made a tiny change to something, a tiny adjustment that actually had a dramatic asymmetric output in terms of what it did for my life. And so again, I would just encourage you, anytime you have that train of thought, ask yourself the question of whether that is real or if the tiger may not actually be there.
That tiger may not actually be there. Out of all of the 5 types of wealth, I find mental wealth to be probably the most impactful, right? It seems to have the biggest ROI because with the mental health, right, and there's a mental health crisis, you could say, that people are going through, it allows you to dive into the other ones with a angle and a perspective and a groundedness that you may not get if you start with something else, right? So you mentioned in the book some mental health things like the 111 journaling practice that you have. You just mentioned the walking, right? Walking being a powerful tool to kind of just have that moment by yourself to reflect and removing yourself from technology, removing all these things. And really, for me, walking is like an opportunity to be just really present, really like observe what's going around, the sounds, the colors, everything that's going around. So talk a little bit about the mentality aspect of wealth and how you can kind of tap into that and use it to fulfill all the other aspects of it.
I think the number one thing I would encourage everyone to do from the book is the Think Day exercise that's in the mental wealth section. This is basically the idea to take 1 hour once a month and go to a different place. Like, don't go to your usual environments because your mind will follow your environment. So if you're in a very like patterned environment, you're going to think in the exact same way that you normally would. Go to a new space and just bring a notebook, journal, and a pen. No technology, and zoom out and ask yourself some of these prompt questions that are in the book to just like think about some of the bigger picture things in your life, in your professional life, in your personal life. That practice is one of the most asymmetric things you can do for your life. When I talk about asymmetries, what I mean is like something where you can deploy 1 unit of energy and have a 100 or 1,000x return on that energy in your life. That hour, you will realize that you very rarely spend time thinking about these bigger picture things. We very rarely have time or space in our life to break up this like loop of stimulus and response that we're constantly in. You have all of the inputs coming in, emails, urgent things, family responsibilities, all of that, and you're in this immediate response loop where everything you're having to just go from stimulus to response. Breaking that and allowing yourself a little bit of space to think, you uncover something in your life. Every single time you do it, you'll uncover something that you can take action against that will improve your life.
Yeah, have you ever done sensory deprivation?
I haven't.
Oh,
no.
man, that's...
Float tank or something?
Yeah,
No, I haven't.
You got to go in there.
Yeah.
In the regards, you tell the fisherman story in the financial aspect of the 5 types of wealth, and I think that it's such a perfect representation of what we get construed or misconstrued as a culture and as a society of what's important. And you bring up a great point of like, it's not right or wrong. The fisherman's not wrong and neither is the businessman. Like, they both have their value sets of what's important and how to get there. And ideally they're getting to the same result. It's just the fisherman has this less complex way of going about it versus the businessman who's getting there, right? Ultimately the idea is to get there, but it's this much bigger, grander way of approaching it.
Yeah, it's just 2 very different goals. The 2 have a very different definition of what it means to build a life of enough. And what I reflect on that to say is that having and allowing anyone else's map of reality to impact how you feel about your terrain makes no sense. Meaning, when we take out our phone and we compare our lives to other people, we look at everyone else that's out there, that's what we're doing. We are like looking at other people's maps of reality, whatever it is they're doing, and we're allowing it to impact how we feel about the life that we are building. The fastest way to kill something great is to compare it to something else. And we do that. We can feel really good about the life that we are building and all these things that we're doing, and then we go see someone that is doing some version of more of that, and we feel bad about the things that we're doing. So pulling ourselves out of that, recognizing that you get to choose the life that you are trying to build. And it can't be about a number. It has to be about a life. Like, what are the things that you are actually trying to create? What is the lifestyle that you are actually trying to build with the people that you love? Where do you want to live? What do you want to be doing? how many houses do you have? What do you want to think about? What are you working on? The actual life that you are trying to build around. Because once you have a clear vision of where you're going, then you can actually take actions now to go and build towards that.
Do you reverse engineer from that end goal to the present moment and then build forward?
I really do like the idea of beginning with the end in mind. I think that if the end in mind is far enough out, you need to kind of like pull yourself back into something that is a little bit more motivating. So I talk about this idea of like checkpoints along the way to make sure you're, on course, as it were. But I do really like the idea of understanding what is the end that I'm trying to build towards.
Yeah. One of the quotes on the wall is comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorites because especially with social media, you can go on at any time and it doesn't matter how good you feel about anything you've done. You can get on there and go, oh, I haven't done enough today.
Yeah. And you need to remove that stuff from your feed. I like over.
You're
and over.
on it. I look at your.
Yeah, but like, hopefully, if I like make you feel bad about your life, you should unfollow me too. Like, I don't. I try to put things out into the world that are just kind of positive for that exact reason. Like, I don't. People won't see me like flexing on my life because. I don't want to draw that kind of attention. It's not what I'm trying to do. But also, like, I have no desire to be a part of that. Yeah. The like bro influencers that take pictures in front of private jets and then want to sell you the course. And you're like, how are you making money? It's not by doing the thing you're telling me to do. It's by selling me the course on how to do the thing that I'm telling you to do. Yeah.
No, but you do provide the tools in which where people can take what you're saying and actually implement it into their lives and take action, right? Because that's at the end of the day, that's what it all boils down to. All of this is all great and it's all fantastic, but if you don't take action on these actual towards these 5 types of wealth, it's completely irrelevant.
Yeah, just go do one thing. Dopamine from information gathering is a dangerous drug. We all need to get more of our dopamine from action. So read a little bit and then go do some tiny thing. And the momentum from that one win can be what really sparks you to go make a bigger change. Yeah,
because you could sit and think about something and that will actually make you feel like you're actually accomplishing something towards that, but you're just sitting and ruminating on it and it's actually not moving the needle forward at all. I do want to give everyone an opportunity to ask a question. If you have one, there's a microphone right there. You can just turn it on. If you will have a question, one or two, we'll keep it kind of short rounded, but if anyone wants to grab the mic and hop on and ask a question, now would be the time for sure. Probably got like 2 minutes. Okay. There's a switch on there. Just pop it up. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Vinny, thanks for doing this. And Sahil, thanks for coming down. My name is Josh. I've got 2 young kids, 6 and 10. And I very much think that me and my wife are their favorite person in the world. And we realize that this is really the time we have with them, the most important time and the most valuable time. In the time wealth section, you talk about really understanding what you can do and focusing on just that. I get lost a little bit in the difference between the goals I'm trying to achieve and all of these daily tasks that I need to do. And a lot of times, like, I'm not even really focusing on myself till it's late in the evening, after the kids' bedtime, after all of that. What's the difference between these daily tasks and goals and sort of how do you manage that all?
I think there are questions that you can look at and ask yourself about how many of the daily tasks are necessary for fulfilling your responsibilities as a father, as a husband, as a family member, as a whatever work professional colleague, and how many of them are, again, things that we've just continued to do because they are the pattern that we've created around our lives. I know every time I ask myself that question on a monthly basis-ish, I end up finding something that I've just continued to do. And like even in our professional lives, in the businesses that I am involved with, we try to do like real zero-based budgeting on an annual basis, because what you find every time you do that is there's a bunch of random expenses that you've just continued to do and spend money on that like actually aren't really driving anything or creating value. So I would take a critical look at like how many of the tasks are really impactful, high ROI time in terms of you fulfilling the things that you need to do and how many aren't. And then the reality is, sometimes that is just the case. And you are going to be in a season of life that is just inherently unbalanced. I sort of feel that way right now. So I'm kind of with you that, like, if I want to get time for my real focus window during the day, it's at 4 a.m. And, I go to bed early enough that I can make that work. But the reality is that my son is up by 7 and I want to have breakfast with him and my wife. And in the evenings, I don't want to be working on stuff because, like, we're having dinner as a family or we're doing bath time. Like, that's where I'm leaving to go to right now. Like, I need to protect those windows in time. And that means that I have to kind of scale down some of my ambitions during this season of life. And that's the trade-off that we then have to think about and make. And to me, that trade-off makes sense. To other people, it might not. And I think that where I come out on all of these things is, like, my answers aren't going to be the answers for everyone else. No one else has the answers for you. It's about identifying what you truly care about and then taking action to actually structure your life around those things.
I want to get you to your son's bath time. I know how important that is because it's important to me as well. Do we have one last final question? Anybody have a...
And I'm also always available. My email is sahil@sahilbloom.com, and you can message me anywhere.
Yeah, we'll go one last quick one, then we'll get you to the tub.
So curious, when you wrote this, it was like theory, right? Like, man, let me just put it out in the world. And now that it's out there, man, how do you feel about, like, the response that you've getting? Because you kind of went against the grain, right? Like, this is what we are looking forward to, but you kind of broke it down a little bit different. How do you feel? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I've been really blown away by the response. You don't really know. Like, I knew that I would be able to sell a decent number of books in the first week, like in the launch, just because I had a pretty big platform. I thought I'd be able to convince enough people to take a flyer on it. But after that, everything with books is word of mouth. It's like people getting some value from it. They read it and then they tell a friend about it. It's like, in business, we call it a K factor. Like, how many people does every new person refer? And seeing that happening in real time, like seeing that, it's been a little over 2 months since it came out and it's still, like, in the, in the charts and all of these things, people are sharing it, finding value in it. That to me is incredibly energy creating because, I left the path that I was on to do something different in the hopes that I could actually do something that was impactful, create some ripples, be some sort of positive influence in other people's lives. And to see something out in the world that's this permanent versus anything else that I've ever done, like a newsletter or social media post, after a day or two, it's basically gone. You don't gift a newsletter to someone on their birthday. You don't gift a newsletter when they graduate. You gift a book. And that is very exciting to me to think about, 5-10 years in the future, this, like, ripple effect that could be created.
Awesome. Dude, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I want to get you to bath time. It's a great read. I highly recommend it. Everybody checking it out. And like I said, it's super palatable, it's readable, it's understandable, it's digestible, and the most important thing, it's applicable, right? These are actions that you could put into your life that will make a big difference in the long run. It's not going to be immediate gratification. It's not going to be a flick of the switch. But in the long run, if you stick to these types of things and have these in focus, your life will change. And you've said it on a multitude of platforms, but your life can radically be different in 1 year. But you have to put in the work.
Absolutely.
Dude, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.